Covering a hobby industry can be a little difficult because at one point we're all passionate about our hobby and we want to enjoy our hobby. And when you cover an industry and kind of the inner workings of it, you tend to cover both good and bad things. And not everybody's up for the bad things. Now, this video does cover 3 recent controversies that have hit the board game industry that I've covered in the past. I have some updates for them, some insights, some like insider insights into them that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. And I'm going to end on what's hopefully a hopeful note. So if you're just tuning in for that, or if you just want to at least make sure that you leave this video hoping that at least one of these turns out good, then I did save that for the end. So we're going to go ahead and go through it, probably from worst to best, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, first up is an update on Toyzzo. If you don't know, Toyzzo is this. This is actually their website, or at least was their website. Toyzzo was a Chinese company that randomly popped up and made a whole bunch of claims. Most of them weren't able to be possible, from where they were going to ship things to what they were including in the table and all that. And so they kept reducing and changing and pretty much promised anything that they could get away with a very, very, very cheap board game table. Board game table kind of like this, but $250. And with $75 shipping. So if you believe that, let me tell you another one. No, so they claim they had like a long history, yet there's no history of them. They used a free vector image for their logo. They had a website for exactly a month, just long enough for their campaign, and have now posted another update. I wanted to explain this a little bit more for you guys. Slightly technical, but not too bad. So if you see here, Toyzzo.co used to have a website that just posted what they had on Kickstarter with a link to the Kickstarter. That was no about us or anything like that. It was a fake website to begin with. And as you can see now, they didn't even bother paying for an actual website any longer. So how does this work? Well, they got this from GoDaddy.com, right? This domain, Toyzzo.co. They got the .co because it's always cheaper than something like a .com or something like that. So it was a cheaper domain that they were able to get, and they still have it. That's what this part means here. The is part, right? Means I can get this domain here right now, and it'll say, oh, for about $70, we can probably get this domain for you. Not necessarily the case, right? And there's also the like 20% commission to the broker, whatever. There's a few other ways you can go around this, but essentially what happens is you have a domain, and normally you have to pay for that domain. Normally you pay for it for like a year or whatever, or every month. It just depends. And then you have a website, and often if you use a service like WordPress or Squarespace or something like that, you're often paying monthly for the website as well. And so what this means is they've stopped paying for the website, but still have the domain, either because they paid for it in bulk ahead of time or because they're still paying monthly on it. I don't know. But either way, they have the domain, but they're not paying for any website to actually be here. Now, normally you don't want to necessarily do this unless you're just camping on a popular website, which this one isn't. And even if that's the case, normally you want to host your own ads because they're going to split the ad money from this. So if you click on any of these with GoDaddy, normally it's like a 50-50 split that they'll do. But it makes it to where people associate this with your your company. So that's why most companies, you don't see this happen, because it's not a good look. And of course, it's not a good look for Toyzzo, but it's probably the least of their concerns. Anyway, I've explained that now. That's kind of what this means, the is part, right? And get this domain. It is still technically like paid for. At least it was before, or is, currently, but there's no website actually hosted here. Okay, so they posted update number 3, the third update. Now, none of them are very long updates, of course, but they did post an update. I wanted to explain something, though. You'll notice here that it finished funding on October 29th, and then they finally posted an update November 15th. They didn't even thank you right away, right? A lot of companies, like real companies, they'll be like, right away, thank you so much, we funded, it's great, and now we're going to make this for you and all this. So we have a thank you for an incredible campaign journey by Toyzzo, November 15th. Now that is about 2.5 weeks, almost to the day, from funding. Now the reason that's the case is because if we go to Kickstarter here and we see kind of how it works, you'll receive your funds 2 to 3 weeks after running a successful campaign. So what this really means is they waited until they got the paycheck, the nice kind of almost $500,000, the $426,610, minus 10% that Kickstarter has now gotten paid. So they won in this deal, and Toyzzo won in this deal. Whether the backers will or not remains to be seen, probably unlikely. But either way, they got a cool $400,000 check from Kickstarter, and then they decided to post an update, but they didn't post an update until they got paid. I feel that actions obviously speak louder than words, but I feel like you can look into actions to figure out where the mindset is, because even if you're not overtly thinking something, your internal biases and stuff like that will come. So if they waited to thank you until they got the paycheck, I think it's pretty obvious where the focus is. It's on the paycheck, right? That's what prompted them to actually interact with you guys. Oh, now we got paid, right? So now we'll update it. They weren't just thankful that eventually they will get paid, or that they're able to make their dream come true, or anything like that. They got a paycheck, now they're celebrating, right? And that's, I think, says a lot. So if we dive into this actual update here, I'm going to break this down a few ways here. So this, you got the dear backers, what's next, and a heartfelt gratitude. So right here, they say, we want to take a moment to express our deepest gratitude for your unwavering support. Then down here, they say, we want to express your deepest gratitude, or our deepest thanks. Your unwavering support has not only made... So notice they pretty much are saying the exact same thing over and over again. What most people are saying is that, and I agree, this is ChatGPT. Now, I don't know if this is necessarily malicious. So, but first of all, I want to read this paragraph right here to you. It says, once more, we want to express our deepest thanks. Your unwavering support has not only made this dream possible, but has also solidified our belief in the power of community. Together, we're not just creating gaming tables, we're forging memories and experiences that will last a lifetime. Now, I've messed with ChatGPT quite a bit, actually, either just investigating it or even at work. I use it sometimes. So I've looked into this quite a bit. I've even looked into it for the channel here. And if you have it all, you know that it's it just screams ChatGPT. It screams some kind of actual large language model that can hey, write an update for a Kickstarter campaign, that was successful that you want to thank people with. And then you would put it in the query and out pops this. And that's why it's also kind of generic, right? It talks about the community, but this has not been a positive community. There's a lot of complaints. Almost every comment is negative. Seriously, you can go to the comment and look yourself. People are understanding what's going on here, right? So the power of the community, and we're forging memories and experiences that last a lifetime. I don't know what that has to do with selling board game tables necessarily as a company. It's too generic. It's too fluffy, and it just reads like that. And the repeated kind of formatting of the text here, again, also a pretty telltale sign. You can typically do this. Professors around the world are doing this on their papers that their students turn in, because it could get pretty obvious that stuff like this is happening. Now, a lot of people say that and are like, oh my gosh, that it's fake, right? I will say this, okay? And this is me kind of trying to be a little bit nuanced here, but this is true. A lot of people who do not speak English are starting to use ChatGPT to do the translation for them. They're able just to submit a prompt, and then out comes this seemingly really good English that then they'll dump in an update or as a response. I've seen this in multiple campaigns just on board game Kickstarters, and of course throughout the internet. But it's a very common tool for the active professional for a lot of things. As a software developer, I do a little bit of that for my own languages. Now, they're technical languages, stuff like C# and stuff like that. But you could do it with actual languages, Chinese and English and stuff like that. So this does happen quite a bit. I don't actually hold that against them per se. I think that this is a little too soulless. They have a little kissy emoji and stuff like that, but it's just, it's way too loose, right? There's not actually really good information here. They do claim that they will be delivering in February, and there is no mention of a pledge manager in here at all. Now, I'll update that as well, of course. Then they do have this. It says, if you have inquiries or concerns, feel free to reach out to us by emailing playlux_, I don't know what playlux is, God only knows, Toyzzo at toyzo.co. Now, notice this has a toyzo.co, and that right here, it's part. Now, normally, when you get the domain and you host a website and you get the email domain to that too, right? The toyzo.co at toyzo.co email address, often that's kind of a package deal. And so, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be, but normally it is. And so I was wondering, is this real? So I sent an email to Playlux at Toyzo, just seeing what the heck's up with that. And I haven't received a response. It's been about 21 hours, as you can see here. So it hasn't been too long. We'll see if they update it. It did send, though. I didn't get a could not send kind of error or anything like that. So it seems to be like this sent okay. So they are at least paying or have the kind of email address live. Now, again, the Playlux, God only knows what that is. If you guys You internet sleuths have figured that one out. Do let us know in the comments below. I'll be sure to look into it further as well. But for this video, I think this covers it a fair bit. Pledge Manager. So obviously, they're not mentioning any. It's like they don't even know they need one, right? And so, sure enough, this is how Toyzzo works, right? Is they obviously show they have no idea what they're doing. People ask questions. Hey, what about this? And they're like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, it's this. Right? And they do this every time for every single thing, whether it's the battery pack, whether it's shipping, whether it's delivery, whether it's videos, whether it's reviews, regardless of what it is, invariably that's what the operation is. So same thing here. People ask about the Pledge Manager, and sure enough, the comments, we will post a new update when we set up Pledge Box for you. Okay, and they mentioned Pledge Box a few times, right? So they have the Pledge Box here. So we'll look into the Pledge Box. Right here, this is Pledge Box. Now, I had not heard of this Pledge Manager, though I did do some research and saw what people said, and sure enough, it seems to be a fairly legitimate, Pledge Manager that other companies have used. In fact, they have a few kind of fairly large name users, and as you can see, they work with Stripe and a verified partner with Kickstarter and all that. They seem to be legit, okay? Now, if you go here and pricing, you'll notice that it is free, and I am not surprised by that. Not to say that, I'm not trying to hate on a free Pledge Manager. I'm not saying that a company can't use a Pledge Manager. I'm saying that a company that doesn't seem like they'll actually be delivering anything, that won't even pay for a website, is using a free Pledge Manager, and that does not surprise me, that they are not investing money into this. And we have seen no amount of money invested into this. In fact, it's the opposite. This is the amount of money they're investing in Toyzzo.com right now, right? Like nothing. Like they didn't even buy the .com. It's a .co because it's cheap, and then they only paid for it for a month during the Kickstarter. So they're definitely not going to pay for a Pledge Manager. Now this says it is 3% if you have upsell. Otherwise, it's just always free. So it looks like, I don't even know if they'll have an upsell because they just had the one kind of, hey, here's your board game table. And I suspect that's what they're going to do. Even if they do deliver, they're going to want to keep the SKUs down. The picking and packing is going to be, I don't even know if they call it that for something this large. But either way, it's going to be here's your game table, here's your game table, here's your game table. They did have the dining top. And so maybe they'll have that, maybe they won't, I don't know. Either way, it won't be any money out of pocket for them right up front. They'll just take that off of the sales that they're already getting. So anyway, that's where they're at with that. Now, there is one comment here. Alistair Calder said 2 days ago, I submitted 2 complaints to the trust and safety team at Kickstarter during the campaign. Their response was that they could find nothing wrong with this campaign. So I'd like to remind everybody again, I know some of you guys watching right now are developers, are creators in the board game space. So hear me out here. Go to GameFound. GameFound is actually for board games, not just everything under the sun. And unlike Kickstarter, they seem to care a bit more about what's on their site. Are they perfect? Of course not. No company is. I'm not perfect. Some are closer than others, right? And I think GameFound is closer to perfect than Kickstarter. It just, if nothing else, it's by gamers for gamers, and I'm down with that. And I appreciate a lot of the efforts of putting into stuff like the shipping, lock that they do and stuff like that, so you can kind of back a little bit more confidently with a lot of stuff. So yeah, this Kickstarter thing where they just don't care, because at the end of the day, Kickstarter got 10%, and they're going to keep that 10%, whether you ever get the table or not. You don't ever get the table. Guess who won? Kickstarter did. They got their money regardless of the delivery of this. I would love to see an update to even GameFound or something like that, where they get the 10% on delivery, but obviously that won't happen either. But it would certainly make them a bit more invested, right? And making sure these products actually deliver, if that was the case. It would also prevent them from the campaign spam, because no, deliver your thing and then launch another one, because they're not going to get the 10% from the other one yet until it actually delivers. That'd be kind of cool, actually. There was some problems with that too, but either way, yeah, GameFound, better. Okay, next one. Everything was done behind our backs. This is on Board Game Wire. I'm going to link down to this in the description below, of course, for you guys to do your own research. I covered this Devil Pig Games issue in the past. Again, I'll link down to the videos here. I did one on Toyzzo. I'll link down to that. I'll link down to this one and the one following this as well. So if you don't know, the Heroes of Normandy was a big series that they did. And obviously, it ended in disaster when it went to liquidation, essentially. The website just randomly shut down. Everybody was surprised. There was including the people that worked on the game. They were surprised too. So let's kind of break this down, kind of close this one up a little bit. Okay, so Devil Big Games hit severe financial issues in 2018. That was quite a while ago because they had more Kickstarter projects than they were able to deliver. Now, where have we heard that problem before? It's almost like they don't learn, right? That these companies continue to do stuff like this, and it's like, learn from other people's mistakes. Learn from Devil Pig Games' mistakes. Learn from Mythic Games. Learn from Peterson Games. All these failures that weren't able to actually deliver their stuff because they just campaign. Oh crap, we can't pay for all this. And now you're really screwed as opposed to just a little bit screwed. The ones that struggled a little bit, they had to ask for funding or do something else or whatever, but they got it and they were able to deliver it because they didn't have a huge catalog of games that they hadn't delivered yet. That's when it becomes the hard part. That being said, they were bought out by the Board Game Strategist, which is a separate company that's run and owned by the Matagot CEO, Arnaud Charpentier. I'm probably butchering that name, I apologize. I will pause real quick to point out that the Pigs from Hell is the predecessor company of Devil Pig Games, which is bought out by the Board Game Strategist, which is actually owned by another company CEO. Notice there were 4 companies involved there, all owned by the same people. When I see stuff like this, I tend to think in my head, personally, scam. I tend to think it's these people that are like running companies that are like working with their own selves to just exchange money back and forth until eventually they're the only ones that won out of this, right? And you see this kind of in the headlines all the time, right? There was a recent cryptocurrency like arrest, like court trial thing for this, right? Where this guy was like creating these other companies that were working with it, and he was involved in that one because he actually owned both. So he owned like every aspect of it. And you just see this kind of stuff all the time, and it gets really, really funny when you start seeing, oh, Devil Pig Games, oh, that's actually Pigs from Hell, which is actually owned by the Board Game Strategist, which is actually owned by the Matagot CEO, right? Like at some point, you're like, why so many breadcrumbs, right? At least that's personally me. So that looks sketch beyond sketch. I would not touch any of those companies based off of just reading that paragraph. That makes me go the other way. That looks like businessmen doing businessmen things. And me as a consumer, I can't get into any of that. That seems dangerous to me. Moving on from that though, we're going to be hearing from the Heroes of series co-designer Clement Sarratt. Again, I know I'm probably saying that name wrong. I do apologize for that. That's as good as I got, and I did practice before filming. And again, this is not a stab at any one person here or anything like that. I'm not gonna like dive into the people and who they are. Just you need to know names because we're gonna be saying names here, right? So Arnaud, right? That's the Matagot CEO here. This is Clement Sarratt talking. Then asked us to stop working on Heroes of Stalingrad, and on September 29th, 2023, he announced that Pigs from Hell's credit card had been hacked. Again, I don't know what happened there, but okay. He told us no more, but a few days later, the pledge manager was shut down without warning. When we asked by mail the person in charge of the pledge manager to explain the situation, he replied that he had been instructed not to communicate on the subject. So now the person who made this game is like, hey, what's going on? You know, like getting paid for them by the company. Oh, it's still under contract and all that. It's like, nope, they're not talking to me either, right? Again, this is everything he did was behind our back. He told us no more, but okay. So then right here it says, then they did not receive their salaries at the end of September. So during September, they're like, hey, what's going on? Again, September 29th. And then they never got paid. Okay, so they just didn't get paid. The payment stopped. And Chapnier was saying he would be able to explain more towards the end of the month. Again, Chapnier being the Matagot CEO, right? So we had first name and last name, but that's why I kind of explained that to you. So, okay, end of the month, I'll explain things, all right? Okay, well, sure. But then, of course, on October 3rd, they found out that they were still selling games on their website and they weren't actually delivering it. So then, a few days later on October 11th, so this is not too far from September 29th, right? The website finally did close its doors, and that's when I reported on it. That's when everybody kind of found out because it was very public at this point, right? Again, without warning, depriving the community of its forum, we asked management for at least a press release, and this message was published without our agreement being the designers here. Devil Pig Games is facing serious difficulties due to the recent unforeseen and brutal events beyond our control. We are making every effort to find a long-term solution, but until this has been fixed, we are stopping all operations. As soon as these troubles cease, we will resume our activity and inform you. And so that's, again, what was just, if you visit their website, that's what you saw. So they asked Arnaud, again, the Matagot CEO, for more information, but the only reply they got was, I can't tell you anything before October 26th. By the way, can you deliver the files for that third-party game? They refused to comply because, if you recall, they also didn't get paid. So they're not going to deliver anything until they actually get paid, which that wasn't the case. So the trio received an email from Chatneer several days ago confirming, several days ago, by the way, this was posted November 1st. Okay, so like still fairly recent, but a little bit ago. Confirming Pigs from Hell Games has ceased all activity with Cyril Filet, again, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, I apologize, appointed as a liquidator. And in fact, backers were contacted by them to submit some information to be debt holders in the business. Now, again, the backers are going to be kind of like towards the end of liquidation when it comes to who's being paid out. Bills will definitely go first, taxes definitely first, and eventually you. By the way, who else would go first is the people that were unpaid, and good. I mean, that's awesome. So hopefully they get paid what they should have been paid. But again, backers towards the end of there. Now, being able to have a debt holder in the business, that can kind of help, maybe elevate it a little bit, but we'll see. Okay, so one more thing. A subsequent update on the Heroes of the Pacific backers from Saralt, again, co-creator, and this is the trio, the Urhat and Canal, again, I know I'm saying that wrong, I apologize, in the wake of their liquidation, said, "We can only imagine the courage," that's air quotes, "it took for Charpentier," again, the CEO of Matagot, to tell us this way, with such humanity and compassion. Again, that's a /s, all right? That's a sarcasm. Obviously, it was very much not courageous. Not to mention the lack of respect for the community he showed by not communicating with you about the situation. Apparently, he didn't communicate with anybody about anything. He just kind of kept it up to him, and then boom, liquidation. Which, by the way, if he didn't feel like he got paid and he was owed money, he'll get paid as well, probably before backers. Everything was done behind our backs without keeping us informed. Now, Board Game Wire did attempt to contact Charpentier, but surprise, they have yet to receive a response. It doesn't sound like he's talking to anybody about nothing, except the liquidator. So, yeah, kind of unfortunate. That's kind of a gross feeling one. That is a terrible way to end something that had been going on for so long and made so many backers happy and they enjoyed the game. And it sucks when what seems to be a well-regarded, beloved game gets into this business ickiness, right? This kind of like, to me, I in my head, I imagine like these businessmen in suits doing this like funny money crap, right? It's like slush fund stuff going on. Like I don't like it. And it really sucks that this kind of business practice of not telling people, of upper management CEOs not talking to the little people that game designers maybe making games. I don't like it. It just reeks of grossness. It's a bad attitude to have, and it's not one I want to see in the industry too much. Ideally, we can kind of avoid that sort of industry and really focus on designers first, right? Like people making games. That's where we need to go. Sure, it's a business. You need to be able to run a business. Or you end up like this where you run out of money and launch too many campaigns and you don't know, like, you got to have the business down. But in equal measure, you got to have good development. A lot of the companies that I speak with and work in a co-creator kind of thing, right? Where there's like, this is the guy that like is passionate about the games and the community and doing all that stuff, and they want to include everything for free and all that stuff. And then there's the business guy. And when they're equal partners and they can really bounce off each other and each one can push for what's really important, that's when I think you have a great company. That's when I think you can make the best games and the best campaigns, when you have something like that. Backers are safe, they're doing great, and they're getting great games, and everybody's happy. Looks like that wasn't the case here. Okay, now, third one. And like I said, I'm hoping this is a little bit more positive. It's not great. It's not great, but hopefully it's a little bit more positive. This is the Creature Caster incident with Judgment Eternal Champions. Again, as a reminder on this, they delivered the resin. It's a great game. I've played it before. It's awesome. The resin minis are amazing. It's a beautiful game. The PVC ones, however, which a lot of board gamers, like real board gamers that didn't want to I didn't want to say real board games, like the other ones are fake. People who strictly play board games and don't venture out in like tabletop stuff or like miniature even assembly and for any reason, painting or anything like that. Like they're just board gamers. They want the PVC one, and the prices kind of got away from them here. Now, this is a nice update. Again, it came out November 4th, and I've kind of been sitting on this, trying to really figure out if anything else is going to come quickly on this. And I was trying to see if they would have any sales. They haven't really done too much yet. We'll kind of explain that a little bit, but either way, this is better communication. That being said, again, the last time they communicated was November 4th. Obviously, it's now been over a month, and it's really frustrating when the month minimum communication that should be going on is lessened when things get bad instead of increased, which is what it really needs to be. You need to do great. Now, I don't mean put out so much information that nobody can keep track of everything, right? And this is pushing that, right? So I'm going to break it down for you, but just a little updates. People just like hearing that you're there and you're working on it, right? Okay, so let's talk about the PVC delays. Now, I'm going to kind of zip through this and just show you the highlights on this and kind of talk about it when it makes sense. So down here, what they're talking about here is that they do have projects that they have been involved in and that will monetize around the January, February 2024 timelines. So this is going over hey, here's what we're going to be doing, right? They're going to have a Black Friday sale, and then they're going to be doing Christmas stuff. And then January, that they have another launch in their store. And then at this time, they have some projects, two specifically, that they're involved with. One of them that they should get some money from. We're going to be talking about that later on because they mentioned it later on. It'd be better to talk about it then. Okay, so here's the Creature Caster and Path of Judgment. Currently, our team consists of 10 full-time employees and 2 part-time. Leading up to and during the Kickstarter, this number rose to 16 employees working full-time. So just to give you an idea of the size of this company versus, and again, they range wildly, right? I will also say that not all full-time employees cost the same. There is a reason why Dimension Games has a lot of their people, most of their people in China. There is a reason why Kaman has most of their people in Brazil and in China, right? There is a reason why you see so many from Poland, because the cost of living in a lot of these different areas, what you have to pay full-time employees, just not saying it's not fair, they can live nicer, really good lives there, getting paid what they're getting paid, just it's overall USD cheaper. When you're making money in USD specifically, often the transfer rate is amazing. A lot of YouTubers, for instance, or anybody that works remote, often, I say YouTubers because often that's young dudes and stuff like that, they go to places that tend to have way cheaper cost of living, but still have a lot of English speaking and stuff like that and good internet connection. Because really, that's all you need. You can live anywhere, and so all of your Patreon comes in USD, and all your Twitch followers come in USD. And it's a very common practice, right? So a lot of these companies have cheaper, so you can't just go by amount. Now I don't know where these are. I don't know where the 10 to 16 employees were or are. I'm just saying people in the EU, let's say Germany, for instance, will get paid different than people that are in Mexico, which you get paid than people that are in Singapore, which you get, it varies, right? So, but either way, that gives you kind of an idea of how big they are and how big they still are. The Kickstarter was successful for us. Now, this was not as large as they had hoped, but enough to cover their expected manufacturing costs without needing our contingency funds. So they did have contingency funds, but that being said, it looks like they kind of barely eked by, but they were successful. They have a pizza party, and then they get back to work because there's still a lot of work to do. Now, he breaks down some money here. I'm not actually going to go over this. It's all loosey-goosey stuff anyway, and you can dive into this, obviously, if you want. It will be linked down below. But as you can see, they did not actually end up breaking even on Judgment. So they thought it was successful, and that it wasn't as large as they'd hoped, but not. And I guess the point there is that very, very often, especially as a first-time board game creator, they created minis, but they didn't have a board game until this. It ends up costing way more than you think it does, way more, and you need that huge buffer. So as a software developer, we do a lot of this when it comes to estimating time and buffer time and stuff like that. And when you are really trying to make sure, we gotta be able to promise a date and hit it, you have such a huge buffer because invariably by the time you do it, you might still be late. Even though you're there's no way we're gonna take up that much time. It's amazing how complex things like board game creation, how much time it can take, how expensive it can end up being, and you didn't even realize how many fees there are. Oh my gosh, just delivering this into Europe. How could I possibly pay that much for that? I had a third of that listed. Like it happens. It happens. So I just thought it was interesting. Kickstarter was successful. We didn't break even, right? It's like, oh, yep, turns out no. And I think that's the case for a lot of board game creators. And they don't know what they're getting into. It's a lot. It's complex. Looking back, we would have done a lot of things differently. A smaller Kickstarter with less ambitious initial release would likely have been a wiser choice. At the time, it seemed like we had to provide everything at once. Now, there's a little bit more later on. We'll get to it, but essentially they have 30 SKUs. 30 SKUs. There are so many companies now that I've talked to that talk about how much just adding one extra SKU can cost. And it doesn't excuse its price, and it's a little bit of revenue that it brought into you because not everybody even buys it, right? The moment you buy, or the moment you add all these SKUs, it just gets more and more complex, right? It's kind of like when you have that like people chart and you draw a line to like two other people, and when you keep adding more, suddenly it's like, and you add one more person, and it's like way more complex, right? Same kind of thing. It's a huge amount. And so when you have this like ambitious project, I feel everybody has this. It's somehow crowdfunded board games became bigger games than retail. And retail is mass market, huge production. So how crowdfunded became bigger than mass market, huge production is beyond me. I don't understand it. Whereas a normal, like a legit company releasing at retail will release maybe an expansion pack at the same time or something like that. And then slowly over time increase it, right? Think about like how Descent works, right? Like especially like Descent 2nd edition, 1st edition, where over years, they just supported it with, oh, here's this new expansion and this new character pack. And then, oh, now we added these dice here and this new system you can do. It's just a packet of scenarios. And now here's another expansion here. Like that's literally how you kind of slowly expand it in a controlled way. These campaigns, for whatever reason, it's like they have it in their heads. They being developers, most developers, from what I can tell, just based off what they're launching. I want a mass market produced in China with a large order, right? None of this like ho-dunk, I'm making it and shipping it out of my garage. I want to work with a 3PL to ship it across every single country known to man all over the globe. Global launch of this massive thing. And I want 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 expansions. I want this hero pack. I want the dice pack. I want them to have 5 different options in neoprene mats. I also want them to have a t-shirt and a onesie for their baby with my logo on it. Like it's everything. It's this massive thing. And it ends up being too much. And it ends up being way more difficult, way more expensive. And even if the revenue looks like it's there, the profit isn't. There's a reason why in the same year that Marvel Zombies came out and Kaman had their biggest Kickstarter in revenue, the profits did not say the same story. That's why. Because as much as you could buy, they still had to make that giant Galactus and still had to make all of those expansions and then actually ship them all. And that costs so much money. You're killing your profit by driving your revenue. And it's just like such a backwards thing to do. Yes, make smaller games and add on them over time. You can deliver quicker, you can control your costs more, you can make people happier more often, and you can drive a more engaged community that you engage with more than just campaigns every 2 years until eventually you have too many campaigns that you can't deliver. I think every single developer should take a good hard look at that. Okay, moving on. Regarding the mystery project, the one that they kind of loosely mentioned around January, February time, we have been paid monthly for our work on the project as well as having royalty agreements for when the project launches. Not only has this helped with cash flow, but it will also provide us with what we hope to be significant lump sum in January. We're excited to announce more about this project and rest assured that it has in no way taken from judgment, and if anything, it will contribute to the Kickstarter's completion. Lazy Squire Games. That's what this is, right? It's the exact same kind of thing. Archon Studio, they did it with Chronicle X, right? With their own projects, but it's the same thing that like, I can't deliver this, So I'm going to have to look at ways I can get revenue. I can pull Mythic Games and ask the consumer. That went well. I can try and sneak another campaign like Blacklist Games did on Indiegogo. That went well, right? And it's not necessarily a great idea to like add another campaign to pay for the old one, right? Robbing Peter to pay Paul. Not a good idea, right? So yeah, those. Okay, get rid of those. So how else can you do it? Well, you can look for investors. They do talk about that a little bit, right? Especially an angel investor would be great, right? And Peterson Games, that's what happened with them, right? They finally got an investor, finally got a distributor to like talk to them, right? So you can do that. You can just start hustling. I know Succubus Publishing did a lot of this kind of like hustle for Madara between the two campaigns that they did. So that was the thing. Or you could do like what Lazy Squire Games does and what they're doing now too, where they're working on, they're releasing like side stuff, like their minis and stuff still, their other part of their business. And then of course, working for other companies to do kind of a service for them for a price, right? A business service. And that's what they're doing here. Whether that's great or not, whether that looks great or not, that's debatable. What I will say on this at least is it looks like what's holding it up is just money, and not necessarily like work on it. The Lazy Square thing has an issue where there's still work to be done, and they're just not really doing a whole lot of work on it, but then they do a ton of work for these other companies, right? So that's a bit of an issue. They just need to be able to actually make those PVC minis and ship them to their backers. And so they're hoping to get enough income in there to actually do it. Probably the best way to do it, but let me know your thoughts on what they should do. And they do list a whole bunch of other options. I'm not going to go over them all, but I mean, that's definitely one of the things they can do. If they can provide a good business service to a company that will pay them, helps bring in some income, hopefully that adds up eventually to enough to actually deliver. We could have played it safer and given backers a more guaranteed return on their investment. Again, this is kind of one of those things where, again, you could essentially have not risked so much on this by putting in everything, right? He talks about like wanting to achieve his dreams and going for it. And the problem with the CEO now trying to pursue his dreams is he did it at the cost of his backers now years without money, and he still didn't achieve his dream, right? And like that kind of sucks, right? It when you're put in responsibility positions like this, right? Like being a CEO of a company and having public like product for sale and stuff like that, is your failures don't just affect you anymore, right? It's kind of like becoming a parent, right? Like if you're single, right? If you're just some young guy or whatever, and you want to like go and try and live your dreams or whatever, and if you fail, you gotta crash on your mom's couch for a while or whatever. Either way, it only affects you. But when suddenly you now have a dependent, a responsibility to others, now what you do affects them. And guess what happens when you do that? You sell the motorcycle, right? You stop traveling the world, right? You settle down, you play it safe. You get a good job that pays well enough and is secure, instead of going with your wannabe bandmates and hopefully getting a gig every now and then so you can maybe pay for rent, nonetheless mortgage, right? Like that's how life works. And so it's kind of weird that you don't always see that in the business sense. Now, of course, it's easy for me to say that being in this position, though I have 4 kids. Like I do understand having other people get affected by anything I do that's risky, right? If I decide to quit my job and go YouTube full time, that's a risk. And it's a risk I have not taken because that would affect other people besides just me. Same kind of thing here. He took a risk and now other people are suffering because of that fail. And kind of sucks, right? Definitely kind of sucks. Okay, moving on here. This is where I noted there are 30 SKUs and hundreds of orders, right? In other words, they can't even like swap this. They're talking about doing like resin models and stuff like that. But the problem is it's such a big deal. It's just like saying, oh, you could drop your 3PL. It's like, yeah, and then have the headache of actually delivering all that. Good luck. This stuff gets so complex. 30 SKUs is huge. Avoid that. If you're thinking of a product, don't do that all at once. Just get a game out there. Just the core game. Deliver it. You can deliver it quick. People will love it, and then expand on it afterwards. We got to stop with this 30 SKUs junk. It's dangerous, as he said fully well, especially hindsight. It's risky. It's riskier. It's just inherently riskier for any company to do. Okay, now I highlighted this because it was kind of odd. They mentioned that shipping containers of this volume to 5 different warehouses cost 35 to 40K plus the regional shipping costs. In other words, that's just the freight, right? So they're saying freight would be about $40,000 for 5 different ones. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It depends on how many containers are really going there, but it does add up, right? So while that does seem like a lot, it adds up. If you need 11 of them. You know what I'm saying? When you have all of these SKUs and all this bloat, you need a way more freight. You need way more of everything. And the moment it's way more of everything, any kind of shift or change just becomes that much harder. Definitely difficult. And that's it. That was by Peter. So anyway, it looks like there's probably a path forward. It looks like they're kind of working on it. It looks like they're making progress to get the funds that they need. But it is kind of hard to make money when you're struggling as a company because not a lot of people interact with you because, again, it's riskier for them. It's kind of understandable. I do appreciate the update. I do want to see more updates. At least once a month. Come onto the campaign that you took money from backers that have gotten nothing in return, and let them know what you've done to try and get them their product. I shouldn't have to ask this. I really shouldn't. It's great that there's progress. It's great that there's hope. Leave an update. Respond to comments. If it's not fun for you, guess how much it's not fun for them either. Like he says here, it's nobody's having fun in this situation. Agreed. But only one of you was responsible for it, and that was you, not them. They're the victims, not you. You're only a victim of your own dream aspirations, I guess, and they're paying the price for it. So you should talk to them. Anyway, that's all I had on this. This was kind of a capstone, I think, on these 3. Toyzzo will probably have another one whenever they decide to comment again or do their pledge manager. I don't know. We'll follow that story. But otherwise, it looks like both of these are kind of nipped in the bud. Again, if there's good news on Internal Champions or bad news, I'll let you guys know, of course. Guys, be sure to subscribe if you like deep dives into this. If you want to be a more well-informed consumer, that is my goal. I try to help you that, whether it's just reviews, whether it's looking over campaigns, telling you deals, telling you a company history, any of that kind of stuff. If I can be of any value to you, please consider subscribing. I want to be able to help. That out of the way, guys, have a great rest of your day and take care. Bye, guys.